Am I the asshole for washing my butt in the dishwasher?
This is more like what we do.
This is very, very much.
I, 25 female, have been living with my roommate Jason, 27 male, for almost 2 years. I met him through a mutual friend because he was looking for a place to rent and my roommate from before moved out. So I was looking for a new roommate. I'm pretty open with my... And with that being said, I don't really hide much, especially at my own apartment. I made that pretty clear before my roommate moved in, and he didn't have much of an issue with it. Jason has been seeing a girl, Amy, for a few months now, and she's been coming around the apartment more often. I've always gotten weird vibes from her, like she has a problem with Jason living with a female roommate, but for the most part, I've ignored it. The other night, I was in my bedroom, and they were out in the kitchen cooking dinner. All of a sudden, I hear yelling coming from the kitchen, quote, "What the fuck are these?" Followed by a slamming sound from what I assume was the dishwasher door being slammed shut. Not sure what was going on. I entered the kitchen and was immediately met by Amy's death glare. She opened the dishwasher and again said, "What the fuck are these?" pointing at my butt in the silverware basket. I began to try explaining myself, although I don't feel I should have to in my own apartment, but she didn't want to hear any of it. She exploded, saying, "I knew you two had a thing," and stormed out of the apartment. Now Jason is upset with me and not talking to me. I feel blindsided by it all. I've been washing my butt in the dishwasher for the entire time that Jason has lived here. If he had a problem with it, or suspected Amy would have a problem with it, why wouldn't he just tell me? Jason and I have never been intimate, and I feel it's unfair for Amy to assume that just because I sterilize my butt in the dishwasher. I figured we are all mature enough that it wouldn't be a problem. Am I the asshole?
Oh, God.
Well, I would say to this, do you need to wash them in the dishwasher? Because actually that's, that's using valuable space in the dishwasher for other things.
Next to your silverware?
Yeah, just in the sink, bit of washing up liquid, quick wash, dry them off with a tea towel or a rag or whatever you call it.
Tea towel.
And that's that.
How do you wash yours, William?
How rude.
Story time about how my best friend got expelled for breaking a sink at my school with another girl's head. Yeah. Background information, my best friend Hannah had a huge crush on this boy who we're going to call Max. So, she had been trying to pursue something with him, and then I get a DM on Instagram from somebody completely random, don't know who they are, that this other girl, who we're going to call Vivian, also likes Max. Now, here's the thing. Vivian and Hannah already had beef with each other.
Oh, hell no. I don't even want to do no research on that shit.
From some shit that they had been through before this. But because Hannah was my best friend, I thought that the only reasonable, logical thing to do was to tell her that there was another girl trying to steal her man, who wasn't her man. Well, it actually turned out that that was one of the worst things that I ever could have done, because after that, Hannah was like, "I'm going to beat this." And I'm like, oh. Okay. And wow, Hannah kept true to her word, because the one day around lunchtime, Hannah walks into the bathroom and she catches Vivian alone. And then I walk in, and as soon as I seen that, I knew that it was over for Vivian. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, this beating was a little bit too personal to be about a boy, so whatever happened between them before, it must have been really bad, because Hannah went in on her. Ignore the makeup, it's for a different video. Okay. Anyway, so Vivian goes over to her and she starts fighting her, but while Hannah was fighting her, she just kept getting more mad and more mad and more mad, and that's whenever she finally decided to literally just smash Vivian's head into the sink.
We do not care.
So after that, we walk out of the bathroom like nothing ever happened. Well, fast forward a few minutes later, I see Vivian walk out of the bathroom holding her head, and there's a bunch of blood pouring down her head as well. And then after the principals found out that it was Hannah, obviously Vivian and her mom pressed charges against Hannah. Hannah went to juvie for 3 or 4 months, and she got expelled. And I lost contact with Hannah after that. And then I'm pretty sure that Vivian had maybe went into a coma, maybe had a little bit of memory loss. I don't know. She kind of got her head smashed into a sink. But I wasn't really close with her, so I don't really care what happened to her. But I actually saw Hannah in Walmart not too long ago, and we are best friends again.
Story time about how I did the dirty with my crush's brother just to get him jealous. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I just turned 23 years old and I've been in love with the same guy for 5 years. This guy, let's call him Chad. He's always said to me that he doesn't want a girlfriend, but then he'll call me at night for, you know what? I decided to ghost him for a month just to see what would happen, but he didn't even contact me. This obviously hurt my feelings because I was totally in love with him. I would have given anything to be in a serious relationship with him, but all he wanted was to party and hang out with other girls too. He started posting other girls to his story and it made me furious. I couldn't believe that he was doing that to me, but at the same time I couldn't hold it against him. Nonetheless, I was brokenhearted. I decided to date a few guys, but nothing worked. All I kept thinking about was stupid Chad. A little backstory about Chad. He has two brothers, one is older and one is younger. The older one is really attractive, and he's also liked me for a very long time, but he also knows that I'm totally in love with Chad, so he never really tried to talk to me because of that. Let's call him Jake. I decided to slide into Jake's DMs, and I told him that I thought he was really hot. He replied right away. Then he said that he had always had a crush on me, but he thought that I was in love with Chad. I lied and told him that I didn't have feelings for Chad, and that I was totally free to date and see whoever I wanted. He wasted no time and asked me out on a date. We ended up having a picnic on the beach for our first date. It was actually super romantic and really nice. We spent about 6 hours at the beach, and of course, I needed to make Chad jealous, so I took pictures with Jake and posted them to my story. A minute after I posted them, Chad started messaging me. He's asking me why I'm with his brother, so I simply responded to of how I did the dirty with my crush's boyfriend just to get him jealous. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. After Jake kissed me, I see I have 5 missed calls from Chad, and I pretty much ignored him the entire night. Jake took me home and nothing else happened. Next morning, I wake up to a missed call from Chad, and also a voice memo. In the voice memo, he starts telling me that he misses me and that he really wants to see me again. My plan was just to completely ignore him, but I caved. I sent him a voice memo back saying that if he wanted something serious with me, that I would totally consider it. Otherwise, I didn't want him to talk to me. He then left me on red. Yep, that's right. He ghosted me again. That's when I called Jake and asked him if he wanted to come over to my place. By the way, at this point, I don't really have feelings for Jake, and I'm totally aware that I was just using him, which I do feel bad for, but it worked. Jake came over and we ordered pizza. We sat down to watch a movie, but of course I pulled out my phone and started posting to my stories. Once again, Chad replies asking me why his brother is at my house, and that's when I really decided to ignore him. I left him 3 of how I did the dirty with my crush's brother just to get him jealous. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Chad tells me that he's coming over to my place because he's super jealous. I have no choice but to tell Jake to leave. But Jake was super sweet about it and he said he totally understood. He gave me a kiss and left. Not even 2 minutes later, Chad shows up at my door. He comes in and starts asking me questions about his brother and I. Told him he had no right to be jealous or to even ask me any questions because he didn't want a relationship. Then he tried to kiss me and I couldn't resist. We started to kiss and before I knew it, we were, After it was over, I came to my senses and told him to leave. Of course, he pretended to be outraged. He told me that he couldn't believe that I was treating him this way. And that's when I said, well, you've been treating me this way for the past 5 years. He had no comeback. Once again, I asked him to leave and he did. A few hours later, I go to Chad's story and he's hanging out with 2 girls. All I could do was cry. So I knew I needed to one-up him. The following night, I go out with his brother and we do it. I posted a picture of his arm in my bed and this sent Chad into a rage. He calls me, but I ignored all the phone calls. That's when I knew I had to tell Jake to go home before Chad showed up. I pretended to feel sick and asked Jake if he could go home. Chad shows up once again to my house. He asked me if anything happened between his brother and I, and of course I said yes. Out of nowhere, he asked me to be his girlfriend. He tells me that this whole time he's actually been in love with me, but that he couldn't see it, and that he couldn't stand the thought of me being with anyone else. I've been dating Chad for 2 months now, but he's super jealous and possessive. I basically ghosted Jake, but he didn't really say anything. I think he knew what was happening, but Chad doesn't even let us speak. I'm having second thoughts about this relationship. What should I do?
Am I the asshole for telling my fiance I won't attend his brother's wedding not even 3 months before ours? My 22 female fiance, 27 male proposed back in August. Not even 2 months later, his younger brother, 22 male, decided to propose to his girlfriend, 22 female. My fiance and his brother aren't that close and don't really talk, so it wasn't really communicated to each other that they were both planning to propose. We're older than my future brother-in-law and sister-in-law, and I wanted to get a head start in planning. We made the assumption that because my future sister-in-law is still in school and my future brother-in-law had just graduated college and getting his career started, that they would have their wedding later down the road. My fiance and I put our deposit down for our wedding venue. We get a call from his brother the day after we booked our venue, and his brother was telling my fiance that he is planning to book a tropical destination wedding less than 3 months before our wedding date. Didn't put a deposit or anything, just wanted to let us know what their wedding planning was going to be like. My fiance kindly told his brother to reconsider because it's not even 3 months before our wedding and we already put down the deposit. This is where my future brother-in-law said they don't want to change their date because they've been dating longer than us. Petty bullshit. His brother asked if we would move our wedding date for them, and my fiance said no because we already put the deposit down. Honestly, why would we accommodate to them if they aren't going to accommodate to us? I gave him an ultimatum and said if they go through with setting their wedding less than 3 months before ours, then I will not be going. My fiance said that's pretty fucked up that I wouldn't go to their wedding, especially since I'm marrying into the family and it would be right before ours, but personally, with planning my own wedding, I feel that I am not financially stable to go to a destination wedding less than 3 months before my own. Liar, 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 liar. Am I wrong for firing my sister after seeing her blog and not rehiring her without an apology? Basically what happened is I read my sister's blog. It was sent to me by a friend of mine who was asking if one of the characters was me. Spoiler alert, it was. It's a couple of years old and really popular. She doesn't use our family's real names, but they are very similar and use the same first letters. So think real names Kathy, Julia, Marissa, and Brad, and then the fake names being Kathy, June, Marine, and Bob. It's descriptive enough of our lives and what we do for work that my friend identified me from it. It's mostly about her and her life, but there is still a lot about us. A year ago, I had an abortion. It was during the lowest point in my life so far, and only she and my husband knew about it. She swore to me that she would take the secret to her grave. Yeah, she wrote a whole entry about it. A couple of months ago, she and her husband got laid off due to world events. I run my own business that wasn't really affected, and I offered her a job there to help her out. She's not qualified in my field, so I essentially made up a position for her so she could have a steady paycheck. She basically does data entry and other random tasks online from her home. Her blog since then has basically centered on how much she hates it. She called it demeaning work and says a bunch of bullshit about how I obviously don't respect her intelligence. I say this is BS because 1, she would need years of training to work any of the open positions. 2, I told her what she would do when I offered it, and she gushed about how grateful she was that I was really helping her. I called her and told her what I had read and how hurt I was. Her defense is that the blog is her online diary where she vents and that I should know not to take any of it personally. She actually had the gall to tell me that she is hurt that I read it. Ugh. Bitch, it's fucking public! Apparently, the right thing to do was ignore it. I told her off for telling the internet my secrets and dragging me online where I could be, and was found out by people who know me. She just said she did all her due diligence by changing the names and it wasn't her fault my friend found it. We argued for a bit, it got increasingly heated, and I fired her. I told her that if she couldn't apologize or see how she was wrong here, then she wasn't who I thought she is and she could find a job where she felt more respected. It's been a week and I haven't spoken to her at all. Her husband has been contacting me on her behalf trying to get her job back as they need the money. He claims she is sorry, but I think if she was, then she could tell me herself. My own husband is telling me I'm overreacting and she's family and I should just forget it. I don't agree. So am I the asshole here?
My nerdy classmate cheated on all of her exams, so I exposed her to benefit myself. In high school, there was a girl named May at the top of our class, who was known for being very quiet, timid, nerdy, anxious, antisocial and a bit of a recluse. She had long bushy hair that reached pretty much her backside, and she always brought a messy stack of books and papers to each class, despite not needing them for anything. Everyone felt bad for her. She was seemingly incredibly intelligent but crippled by anxiety and some sense of deep trauma. But one day, in a class we shared, I realized she was writing answers for a test on the desk and covering them with her long hair. If you write on a desk in pencil, it can be easily wiped away with your hand, and that's exactly what she did after the exam. She was a cheater. I talked to another kid in our class, James, and he said, "Oh yeah, May always cheats, everyone pretty much knows that." She would apparently even write answers on the strewn papers in her desk pile. Nobody wanted to get someone like May in trouble, but frankly as someone just outside the top 5 in my class, it made me livid that May could just cheat blatantly with everyone letting it slide, all the way into the valedictorian position. That makes a major difference for scholarships and everything, and we came from a pretty poor area. She was also an officer in the National Honor Society. One day, in the math class me and my friend Kevin shared with May, we had a substitute teacher who didn't really care what we spent the class period doing. So I wrote, in a careful, bubbly print that was nothing like my typical handwriting, a note to May, saying, "Hey, everyone knows you cheat, and if you don't knock it off, we'll be forced to tell the National Honor Society what you did." I don't think I really would have done anything with the note. Of course, the fact that I wrote it in different handwriting says differently. But Kevin was joking that he would give the note to May. And I was joking back. But to my shock, he did give it to May, by sneakily putting it on the side of her messy desk. She noticed it eventually and must have read it. We had lunch next and May was sobbing, literally losing it at her lunch table. She went to the office after lunch. I started to freak out, because I never thought she'd react like that, and I was someone who never got in trouble. My mother would unalive me if I did. She laid hands on me a lot and looked for any excuse to do so, even chasing me around the house with a rolling pin once. Needless to say, I was terrified of getting called up. I just wanted May to stop cheating. Towards the end of my next class, it happened. My science teacher said I was called to the office and I felt my soul leave my body. I went up and walked into the principal's office. Imagine my shock when he wanted to talk about something completely different. He heard that I was going to beat her up, which was wildly untrue. We both laughed about it and he said he didn't think that was true but had to check. Then he just asked casually, before you go, do you have any idea what happened in your math class earlier? I simply said no idea and tried to be convincing. He said okay and I walked back to class. Later that day, I realized some of May's lunch table group, which was 2 other kids who like to dress like anime characters, seemed angry with me. May had gone home early but her friends seemed ready to fight me, based on the looks I was being given. I was so anxious that they knew I had written the note. At the very end of the day, I walked into the office and asked the vice principal, my volleyball coach, if I could speak with the principal. He said the principal had already left for the day. I straight up said, I wrote the note to May, it was me, I lied to the principal earlier. My coach just said okay, I'll tell him tomorrow, and that was the last I ever heard of the situation. I never got in trouble. May never returned to regular classes. I graduated within the top 5 and it absolutely helped me get better scholarships.